Another benchmark has to do with looking at leveling out the various methodologies into a common methodology. So convert various reimbursements to a common percentage of charge equivalent or a Medicare relativity so that you're able to see things in a like way. Your modeling can help you to do that, to model this payer's book of business on Medicare rates. Or model each of your commercial or each of your Medicare books of business, against the same kind of output, so you're able to compare as apples to apples as possible and not have anomalies in there. If you look at just pure rates and leave out where you have carved out services, you're not seeing the whole picture on what that contract value is. So important to benchmark that as well. You could actually picture, as I say this, probably plotting it on a diagram and deciding where the arrows should go up, down, or otherwise to adjust. Benchmarking against leadership dependencies really has to do with deciding internally before you're in the active negotiation what this payer means to your organization. What do you need to depend on? Where are they in your payer mix now? How big a piece of the pie? What do you want that to be in the future? Where do you want to see them grow? Are there certain sites that you represent? Maybe you're a multi-site organization and some of your sites have a very different payer mix than others. What can you do to align those? How long a commitment do you want with this payer? Is the market changing so rapidly, or the precarious relationship is trustworthy that you want just to activate for a year or two? Or do you want to really commit long-term and demonstrate a more serious commitment to that payer, which would cause a different kind of negotiation? Benchmarking against the overall performance is really key, and by overall, I don't mean just the overall financial, I mean everything else that has to do with the relationship with that payer. Some examples are, the claim payment accuracy, speed to pay, how they perform on authorizations, are appeals tending to be upheld or overturned, what's the frequency of their behavior on those certain events compared to their peers. They may pay well, but they pay slow. They may be one of your most valued providers, but in certain departments, there's a lot of energy spent trying to get an authorization to move a patient. Those things matter, and they should matter all year. Some of you may have scorecards you use internally. Some may use them as documents you share with your payers during the year, but all those factors come in play alongside the financials for the negotiation. We have an example here, Greg, of a scorecard. I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, the first point to keep in mind is with scorecards, scorecards are, I guess, in a lot of ways like babies. They're all beautiful, but some babies are a little prettier to others than, so the same thing applies with a scorecard. This particular example is pointing out several different areas and doing comparisons. There's not a right or wrong. Some organizations prefer to use red lights, green light, yellow light. Some prefer graphs. Some prefer tables. The end of the day, you need to make sure that the scorecard is giving you the relevant information that you and your team needs to make well-informed decisions. The second point with scorecards is it's critical to ensure that the detailed data behind the roll-up report is accurate. If the detailed data is not accurate, then you're going to end up with making false assumptions to what the scorecard's telling you. So like any scorecard, you have to have 100% confidence in the background data as you start to look at your particular payer scorecards and how your organizations are performing, as Susan just noted. Scorecards should point to key signs, market trends, sudden increases or decreases in reimbursement, as well as those comparisons to benchmark statistics to really kind of determine where your organization stands. A few things that we often look at is both in terms of collection by payers. What is the payer volume? How does that compare period to period? Aligning your payers to really see, are the payers earning their discount? An effective discount rate is one metric, if you will, that some organizations will use so that you can ensure that the payers that are producing the largest volume are really earning their discount. You may want to look at your recovery results by organization. You may want to separate out your results from a graphical standpoint of collections by month. There are different ways of scoring, both in terms of volume as well as underpayments. In terms of underpayments, we see a lot of groups breaking out denial rates from contractual variance rates. Another is the percent of claims with specific reimbursement terms. As you go into a new contract, you've probably modeled and you're expecting some level of volume as it relates to outlier hits or lesser of impact scenarios or the additional reimbursement that would come from add-on provisions. You'd want to ensure that your scorecard, if you will, is mapping back and tracking to your goals that you outlined or the benchmark that you outlined with your original simulation. So you would want to potentially include those types of targets in your scorecard process. Susan?
Thank you. The payer's reaction to those scorecards, if they're ones that you present to them or you have highlights from those that you extract and present to them, is also key to telling you what kind of relationship they want with you. So besides checking with your internal stakeholders to really check how they rank these payer relationships, again, out of your seat, looking through their eyes, is also to look through the payer's eyes, right? What is the value that you offer to that payer's network? If you are working for that health plan in that seat, trying to negotiate the contract with your organization, so opposite side of the negotiation table, what value do you offer them? What are you bringing to their network that someone else can't? Is it geography? Is it certain services? Is it ease of relationship? Is it certain access? Knowing those can help you to predict what the other party is likely to do in that negotiation and what's back of room being talked about as they prepare. It's never too soon to be listening for that and talking it through, and even if you had to make a written checklist of the items that you're learning as you go through the relationship, those are all in play as you go through the preparations here. Once you have that baseline, you've checked yourself, you've benchmarked, it's time to establish what you want to do with this particular contract, with this negotiation. I think we're going to pause here and go through a polling question first.
Thank you very much, Susan. Yes, indeed we will. We'll pause for a poll and we'll also take a Q&A break. So first we'll share the results of our first poll. As a reminder, that question was, what best describes your confidence in negotiating payer contracts at your organization? The results were 40% were confident in both strategy and tools, 21% were more confident in strategy than tools, 12% were more confident in tools than strategy, and 27% were overall not confident. Now we will launch our second in-conference poll. Are you using payer scorecards today to measure payer performance? The answers are yes, and we share the results with the payer, yes, but we do not share the results with the payer, or no, we do not have a scorecard process. Again, the question is, are you using payer scorecards to measure payer performance? The answers are yes and share results, yes, but do not share results, and no, we do not have a scorecard process. So now for some Q&A. Here's a question. Should we involve staff from throughout the revenue cycle in initial negotiation planning sessions? And if so, which departments might be best to include?
This is Susan. My answer is a very loud absolutely. They will have perspective and data that either you won't have or you may not fully appreciate if it comes to you on a written report. The earlier folks are involved and the more welcoming you are to having them give you input on that performance of the payer as you're preparing the negotiation, the better. Never too soon. areas that are valuable is really across the entire revenue cycle. Hopefully you're working closely already with your contract variance team to be monitoring what's not performing as expected, whether you have evidence of rates being loaded incorrectly causing differentials in payment to expected reimbursement, or whether you see that the model contract is not being activated that way and still under research. You'll want to have that intel and have them involved. The more comfortable you make folks as an internal planning team to share that input, the richer the input will be.
Terrific. Thanks a lot, Susan. And since we do have some more ground to cover, I'll just ask one more question here. If our analytics capabilities are limited, what are the top 1 or 2 things we should benchmark to be positioned well during negotiations?
So now I have to rank order those benchmarks, huh? I think very important is the benchmark against the current market. The markets are changing very fast everywhere. Knowing you're doing well compared to your history is very narrow-focused. Knowing you're doing well and you're valued compared to what the rest of the market is enjoying from that payer is priceless. So I would rank that right at the top of that list.